The trees in this beautiful neighborhood are deeply rooted. Long before we started this church, God was calling Lakewood United Methodist Church to fruitfulness. God had a vision for our church from the beginning, and God has a vision for us today. The key to discovering the vision to which God is calling us is to remember our story, or better yet, to remember how God's story and our story came together.
Real estate developer Justin Matthews started developing the 2,000 wooded acres now known as Lakewood in 1932.
Well, I think we were the second house in Lakewood. We built our home after we got married, built our home in Lakewood, and I think we were the second house here. When the air base opened and there was no on-base housing, so people started, the Matthews people, family, got busy and developed it. And that's how we built it up. I don't know how many people live here today.
As part of the project, 11 dams were constructed, creating recreational lakes. To attract visitors to the area, Matthews built the Old Mill, also known as the Pugh Memorial Park, in 1933. The city of North Little Rock annexed Lakewood in 1951, and at the time the neighborhood had 4,000 residents. Soon after, Lakewood Elementary School was built, and the first students began in the fall of 1953. Lakewood was a booming area with no Methodist church. It was during this time that a group of Methodists who lived in Lakewood met together at the home of James Woodward to discuss the possibility of starting a new Methodist church in the Lakewood subdivision. They knocked on doors in the neighborhood and invited people to join them. The first meeting of Lakewood United Methodist Church was held in the cafeteria of Lakewood Elementary on Sunday, June 5th in 1955.
We had 38 people that came to worship that day, and that was the start of Lakewood United Methodist Church.
By the end of that summer, 98 persons had become charter members of the church. The congregation rented space from Lakewood Elementary for more than 3 years before building their own worship space. They initially purchased land located at McCain and Lakeview, but later traded that land for the current property. The building project was funded by bonds underwritten by 49 members of the church, and the first bond of $9,000 was purchased by Reverend Worth Gibson.
I'm here sitting in this classroom at Lakewood Elementary School today, and I'm thinking about what it must have been like for me in the first grade when I walked into these rooms. Our lives were kind of a continuum all week long. We saw each other every day, whether it was in Sunday school or vacation Bible school or here in these classrooms. It was a magical time. The spirit of this community was one I was just born into. It was a community of people helping one another, of people loving one another. It was a spirit of smiles and happiness, a spirit of joy, a spirit of camaraderie. Born in this space, it was, the first meetings were here. This space is synonymous to me with the church. And there are all these, through the years, there has always been this continuing connection between the church and the school. My parents were Frankie and Leon Holstead. My mother and father were charter members, and my mother was the church organist. Let me tell you what I would say to my parents and to those people that started this community of faith, that had the vision to start this thing. And if I was to confront one of them today, here is exactly what I would tell them. I would tell them that you would be exceedingly proud at what has resulted from the seeds that you planted. Because I'm a little bit of a student of the history of North Little Rock, and I look through books all the time and I see churches that have been reduced to black ink on a white piece of paper. And I wonder, what does it all mean now that it's been reduced to this? And there were weddings there, and there were marriages there, and there were baptisms in those churches, but ultimately they're black ink on a white piece of paper. This church is not. This church is vibrant, and it's growing, and it's active, and it's changing lives every single day.
And this room actually is where I spent my 4th grade year. Miss Polly Leubner was my teacher. We had lots of good time here. Actually, now that I think about it, this was the room where I was when it came over the intercom that President Kennedy had been assassinated. Well, my memories of being a youngster in the neighborhood, my family lived on Lakeview Road, and we of course went to this school, and going to the Lakewood Methodist Church was so close and convenient. We loved it. Of course, growing up with the lakes and the parks and that kind of thing made living in Lakewood just a very special thing for us. If I could go back and speak to the charter members, I would first of all say thank you. Thank you for setting the foundation for my life. Every life event I have experienced, with the exception of my baptism, has taken place in this church, including the burial of each one of my parents. And so to go back and to be able to thank those with such vision and the charter members would just be an honor to me. I would tell them how special this church has been in my life and the life of my family. And I would just tell them what a blessing they have been for our family and for many families.
We are deeply rooted here. In the parable of the sower, Christ reminds us that fruitfulness comes from deep roots. Over the past 60 years, we have seen change. We have had joys and pain, laughter and tears, but above all else, God has remained faithful to the people called Lakewood United Methodist Church. Jesus told us that if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, "Move from here to there," and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. Faith tells us that no matter what lies ahead of us, God is already there, making a way. Our roots are deep, but there are still seeds to sow, children to raise, stories to tell, lives to change. God's not done with us yet.